Hello and welcome today. And I'm going to be speaking with two really great guests, Dan and Alexandra. And they have a really interesting and compelling story that I was alerted of. And I decided that I wanted to, cover this. And no better way to really get into the minutia of what's going on is than by talking to them themselves. So welcome, Dan and Alexandra. How are you guys today?
Hey man, how are you?
Doing great.
Excellent. So now, each of you individually, can you just kind of introduce yourselves here briefly so we can get everybody on board with who we're talking to and all of the context of everything?
Sure, I guess I'm going first. Um, so my name's Dan Abbott. I'm a staff sergeant in the Virginia Army National Guard. I came from active duty, did a bunch of time with the 82nd Airborne Division and some schoolhouses down at Fort Bragg. And yeah, now I live in Virginia. I'm an arborist by trade. I climb and cut trees for a living. So yeah, born and raised in upstate New York. I'm ashamed to admit that down here in the South that I'm a Yankee, but it's true. So
That's all right. And then you, Alexandra.
I'm also a staff sergeant in the Virginia Army National Guard. I previously served in the Missouri and Texas National Guards, and I'm currently, well, I've got 5 MOSs, and I just finished my second master's degree in American history with a focus on the Revolution.
Perfect. I think that's really interesting. So you guys have a story to tell, and it starts with an organization. I guess we'll say that you guys created and started a number of years ago. So why don't you guys tell me a little bit about the inception of that and how it came about, and let's go from there.
sure. So the organization that you're talking about is Campbell County Militia, and we're an organization that's formally recognized by county government. And as far as where it came from, if you guys remember back to 2020, you had the Virginia legislature say, "Hey, we're going to pass all the sweeping gun control legislation," and VCDL capitalized on Lobby Day, which is a program that the Virginia legislature runs every year, and turned it into a huge gun protest. You got estimates everywhere from 50 to 100,000 people that showed up to petition their government for a redress of grievances.
Right.
And the second and third order effects of that were these 2A sanctuary resolutions that spread all across the state like wildfire, all these local and city governments and sheriffs saying, hey, don't try to come here with your unconstitutional gun control. We're not going to have it. And in response to that, one of the legislators out of Newport News said, well, if you think that you can defy the state, you can't. We'll nationalize the Guard. We'll come and remove elected officials and enforce compliance. And, you know, when the people are threatened with force of arms, how are they to respond to that? Well, they have to have force of arms to respond to that. So Bedford County was the first one to do it. And as far as we can tell, it's the first locality to have a public militia muster since before the Civil War anywhere in America. And so they had a public muster, and I think they had like 580 or 590 people show up to a public park. Sheriff was there, you know, the whole 9 yards. And about 2 weeks later, Campbell County did the same thing. Public militia muster, board of supervisors members, local law enforcement, and, you know, tons of people in attendance. And so that was kind of the inception. I wasn't actually involved with it at that early of the stage. I came to it honestly mostly out of curiosity, like, hey, you know, I'm curious what this is, what's going on with all this. And I was pretty impressed with the organization and the structure. And you know, I'm looking at the Second Amendment and going, well, founders said this was necessary to the security of a free state. Maybe we ought to be taking a real serious look at this. And so I got involved with the leadership committee after the muster, and yeah, we started looking at, well, you know, you say that word today, it's like the dirty M word. It might as well be a 4-letter word. And we started going, okay, some of the finest men in the history of the world wrote that this was necessary to the security of a free state. That's an awful lot of emphasis. Why? Because what those organizations are or look like, or the ideas that are conjured when someone says the word militia today, is certainly not what they intended. So we started doing some digging and trying to figure out, what did these organizations look like? How did they function? Why were they so important? And we came up with 3 characteristics that we felt made those organizations what they had to be and made them so important. One of them we pulled right out of Virginia Code Section 44-1, U.S. Title 10, and the second half of the Second Amendment, which is that it's the whole body of the people. Code Section 44-1 says that the unorganized militia in the state of Virginia shall be made up of the whole body of the people, males ages 16 to 55 trained to arms. And Title 10 basically says the same thing. And of course, the second half of the Second Amendment is that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So we consider that to be one tenet. The second was that every community had one. And it was because they were community support organizations. They covered down the roles of fire department and Department of Transportation and construction company and all of that kind of stuff that we have built contingencies for today. The militia covered then. If a building caught on fire, they called the able-bodied men. If they needed to build a bridge because it washed out, they called out the able-bodied men. So they were community support organizations made up of the finest members of the community. And the final characteristic that we identified was the quality of character of the men that led, which of course is Thomas Jefferson and Patrick Henry and George Washington and John Adams and Sam Adams, and that list just goes on and on and on. And if you've really do a deep dive into the history of those men and those organizations, the stories that come out of it are unbelievably impressive. The quality of character and the force of character that these men possessed was just second to none. And I think that it has to be the exact same kind of men today. It's the men that are already leaders in our communities, and they just need to be educated so that they understand the indoctrination that has occurred through our government schools, so that people don't understand their responsibility, they don't understand their role in government, they don't understand their civic duty. We firmly believe that this is part of that.
Sure. And I think what's important to also highlight and note here, and I want our history buff to take this one, if you may. When we were founded, we were not supposed to have a so-called standing army, were we? So maybe you can talk about that in context of why something like having a local militia is important.
You are correct. The colonists were very anti-standing army because they had seen throughout history how a permanent standing army that is subject only to the king was used to abuse the people throughout all of history. And if you actually read the Federalist Papers, Federalist 45 and 46 specifically, they actually talk about how James Madison's writing about how the militia is there to oppose the government and the standing army. And that's why that was part of his argument for ratifying the Constitution, was that if government gets out of control, it's okay. We have the militia. All the people have arms. We still have the militia under the state control. So that was always a facet of what the government, or how the government was supposed to work.
And that state control is very important because that's capturing part of that idea of the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. And of course, the overarching theme with the doctrine of the lesser magistrate is that power would reside at the lowest level, where it's most easily accessed by and most easily influenced by the people, which is central to this whole idea of the American experiment in self-governance, is that the people actually retain the power and the force of arms.
Okay, so your organization, your group, your militia, is this unique to just your area? You had mentioned one other militia. So what is going on in Virginia in particular with organizations similar to yours?
So as far as organizations similar to ours, there are tons of organizations that are similar to ours, because there are still a lot of people in America that understand this idea of protecting their community and being a community asset and putting manpower at the disposal of local government and local officials. But as far as the formal recognition by county government, which I think is important, I also believe that it's of paramount importance that these organizations carry the word militia, because that is the historically accurate word. It's also the word that's constitutionally protected. And so I think it's of paramount importance that those organizations do carry that word and that they have a relationship with county government. As far as I'm aware, there's only one other county. It's not as far as I'm aware. There is only one other county that has formal recognition, which is Bedford County. they have a similar resolution that was passed by their board of supervisors. And I know there are several other localities that are very close. I believe Appomattox County is very close. They have a very good relationship with their government. They just don't have a resolution yet. There's a number of other localities that are bought into the same model and are working towards getting a resolution from county government that formally recognizes them as a county asset.
Okay. And is your militia in contact with the other militia? Like, do you guys share information, or is everybody kind of just operating on their own?
So I think it is important that the organizations. So I don't like the idea of like if you look at some of, and I'm just going to use as an example, Lightfoot Militia. They're kind of like a national organization. They have chapters that are all over the place. I don't really like that national organization idea because I believe it's very, very important that people have a sense of ownership of this. That it's not the state or the national militia. That this is Campbell County. This is our community, our people, our whatever, our economy, our everything. And so I think that's very important. But yes, we are heavily networked with all those other organizations. And in my opinion, Campbell County Militia is kind of the flagship as far as constitutional militia is concerned because of our relationship with government. And so we make all of our documentation, our codes of conduct and our bylaws and the resolutions and the muster flyers and muster card and any of that I'll make available to anyone, anywhere, in any locality that wants to try to replicate the success that we've had here. Because we believe it's very, very important. So we're in no way, shape, form, or manner any kind of a secret or closed society. We're overtly public, and so yeah, we're happy to network and do network with trying to replicate the success in other localities.
And what are the things that people talk about in, I'll say, the more liberty-minded movement is like all politics is local, right? So, and this is quite actually the definition of politics being local in a sense of ownership of this is on the county level, this is where we're at. So in your local area, meaning your county and the towns that it encompasses, have you guys gotten any pushback or negativity from your people, from your area? How has that been?
The reality is no. There are maybe 2 or 3 raging liberals who are just going to complain, and they've adopted the squeaky wheel gets the fix model, and so they have got something to say about everything. And yeah, so you've got 3 people that are just relentless in their narrative that, oh, these illegal militias on everything. But they're 3 people out of
Well,
hundreds of thousands in the area.
Not to go down that rabbit hole, but like, what is their definition of an illegal militia when you guys are sanctioned? So I'm just curious what the rationale is there.
Well, they don't have any.
Oh, okay.
They hate America, they hate the Constitution, and so they just grab whatever catchphrase they want to use, which in this case is illegal militia, and they're under the impression that if they just keep saying illegal militia, that it will somehow become illegal. My favorite response to that is, well, I'm right here, I'm the commander, please call law enforcement and report my illegal activity and they can come and collect me. Which, yeah, if they call the sheriff, he's going to go, yeah, okay. Because we have a great relationship with him too.
So you've had 3, we'll say, individuals, 3 people that are not a fan of the work that you guys are doing, that are outspoken enough to be public about that in a negative manner. So now, on the flip side of that, obviously you have support of the county and the council there and the formulation. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had the resolutions and whatnot. And it sounds like you have the support of the sheriff as well. What other response have you gotten on the positive end from your county, your community, about the creation of this group?
Well, it's huge. And, the other thing is, we have put a lot of work into that model that this is a community support organization. So we work pretty hard to, participate in community service projects and to, do Adopt a Highway and to do blood drives and all of that kind of stuff to, because we recognize that there's an uphill battle because the left has done such a good job of demonizing that word. So we do often get an initial reaction of like, militia, oh, but that's immediately dispelled because we have such a bulletproof reputation in our community that really anyone that you talk to that has had any interaction, even those who fall on the other side of the political spectrum that vote for a party that I would not vote for. I've seen some interaction on social media with them recently because we've got a muster scheduled for the city of Lynchburg coming up on the 5th of October, and so that's created quite a stir on social media. And again, you've got 3 or 4 people that want to speak out against it, and even a number of those who fall on their side of the fence are like, well, no, hold on a minute, I've interacted with them, and they've always been very polite and professional, even though they know that I don't align with them politically. So yeah, the overwhelming theme in this area is very, very supportive, very, very friendly to the idea. There's still a lot of people left in this country that bleed red, white, and blue, that are Americans to their core, and they recognize that everything about Campbell County Militia is American to the core. It's as patriotic and as pro-America as it could possibly be, and pro-people.
Okay, so I'm going to change gears here a little bit, and I'll just ask the direct question because obviously something brought us together today to discuss all of this. So the direct number one question I'm just going to ask right off the bat is, are you anti-government?
No.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Okay, perfect. It's a direct question. Go ahead, and if you want to modify that, go for it.
Well, ultimately, that's impossible. How could we be an organization that invest as much time in education and civic duty and involvement in government as we do? I mean, that is at least 50% of the effort that we put into everything is encouraging and facilitating people's involvement in the civic process. This past winter, I guess it would be, we took, I don't know what we have, 25 people, something like that we took down to the Capitol. Yep. We went down for just to tour the Capitol and for people to be able to see exactly how it works. We sat in the gallery for the House of Delegates and for the Virginia State Senate, wandered all over the office buildings. I've got probably, I think, 6 members of the House of Delegates and 3 senators and the lieutenant governor that I'm on first name basis with all of them. And so anytime I have a group down there, we go around and talk to all those people and, involve ourselves in the political process. We have a great relationship with U.S. Congressman Bob Good, who's the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. Like I said, the lieutenant governor and all sorts of state elected officials, and as well as sheriffs, ultimately all over this part of the state. It was interesting. I was there with the National Guard, and I happened to bump into a sheriff from a county up near Charlottesville that I know. And of course, I was in uniform there on behalf of the Guard. And he came out of the Senate chambers. He was like, "Hey, you came up and talked at a breakfast club in my county, didn't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I did." He's like, "You're the commander with Campbell County Militia?" Now I'm standing there next to a whole bunch of senior, officers and enlisted soldiers for the National Guard. And he and I visited for maybe 10 minutes. And he said, "Oh boy, it was great to have you. You had really good stuff to say. I'd really like to have you back again." I've clicked the wrong button. There we go. And
that's okay. Let's just keep rolling.
So yeah, he came out and I was talking with him outside the Senate chamber, and we visited for maybe 10 minutes. He said, "Oh, it was great to see you. Boy, I'd really like to have you back. Everything you said was spot on. I'd really like to have you back to Breakfast Club again or something and talk again." And so finally we wrapped up and he walked away, and the senior enlisted advisor looked at me and was like, "So, commander of the militia?" And I was like, "Yes, ma'am." And she's like, "Is that how you know all of these people in the Capitol?" I said, "Yes, ma'am. That's how I know all of them. All the members of the House of Delegates, all the senators, all the lieutenant governor, all of them is through Campbell County Militia's involvement with the political process and with their civic duty." And honestly, she was very impressed and asked questions about the resolution and all that kind of stuff that makes us formally recognized. And so, yeah, the idea that we're anti-government is just absurd. I mean, I have representatives from the county, like elections committee, stuff like that, that come to our meetings and bring voter registration forms and stuff like that because they know that I'm going to lean on everyone that's there. Hey, you need to be involved in the political process. You need to be registered to vote. You need to be involved with your Republican committee because that's where you really have a voice. You know, we've all held our nose and voted for someone with an R that we don't really like. This is how you pick who has the R. You need to be involved with the Republican committee. And so, yeah, I'm really, really heavy on leaning on people to be involved with their political process and their civic duty. So the idea that we're anti-government is just, it's laughable. Ludicrous. Yeah, it's laughable.
Okay, so you've dealt with and you've worked with and are acquainted with a number of, the political leaders and the representatives in the state of Virginia. Now, have you run into any outside of just basic ideological differences, right? Because there's going to be things that you and I believe that plenty don't believe. But have you gotten any negativity from any of the lawmakers just about who you are as the militia rather than, say, ideological disagreements?
No. I have yet to find someone that like ultimately was able to criticize Campbell County Militia for anything that we've done. If that's where I'm not 100% certain I understand the question fully, but no, I have not found anyone who doesn't just hate the idea of power of the people, who thinks that it's a bad idea. Now, I've had people that are initially a little bit standoffish because, ultimately, whether we like it or not, or whether it's deliberate or not, we've been indoctrinated by the media to have a negative perception of the word militia. And so, yeah, there are definitely people when they first hear that word, ooh, militia, I don't know about that. But usually after a 5-minute conversation, that is dispelled. And if it's not a 5-minute conversation, after a 10-minute conversation, any of their doubts are gone.
Gotcha. Well, recently you guys were under fire of what we'll call basically a hit piece. And, that this is how I got acquainted to you. And I read the piece and, there's language in there. There's maybe some semantical games that are going on, but the overreaching theme here. Well, how about we have you guys talk to me first about it? Like you read it, you got it. What's going on with this hit piece here? Let's talk about that.
Oh boy.
Sure. I mean, ultimately, I don't think that there's anyone that could read that, regardless of which side of the political aisle they fall on, and go, "Oh yeah, this is clearly like some kind of fair and balanced, and this is a good article." I think anyone that reads that goes, "Well, there's an agenda here. This is clearly a hit piece." Honestly, it's just. I hesitate to even call it journalism. It's exactly that. It's a hit piece. He just makes up whatever narrative he wants. He doesn't have anything that supports his narrative, and just goes ahead and grabs onto whatever liberal buzzwords he wants. And oh yeah, extremist, racist, anti-government, violent. All of the appropriate buzzwords to get hits on his article, and it's a joke. It's pathetic.
So we'll go down some of the claims. And one of the first ones that you made was racist. Your county, demographics wise, how is it made up? I'm just curious. I know nothing about your area. Mostly white people, good mix, white, brown, black. What are we dealing with?
Last statistic I saw, it's about 78% Caucasian.
78% Caucasian. And then in your estimation, in your group, how many people would you say are left of center, straight up Democrats? Do you have a lot of Democrats that are in your group?
No, we don't. Of course, politically speaking, there's not a lot of Democrats in this whole part of the state. Honestly, certainly not in Campbell County. You have districts that vote, or like this voting district votes heavily red. Like the House of Delegates district for Campbell County, I don't even know if a Democrat runs in that district. Like, why would they? It's
Sure.
a district that's going to vote, 80% red no matter what. So no, we don't really have any Democrats that are members. Um, I do have a lot of members that are ideologically drastically different from myself within the kind of right or kind of conservative. But that's what makes America what it is that we do have those kind of differences and disparities in our opinions.
So you guys have people in your organization that you're friendly with, that you welcome, that you don't agree on everything with. Is that right?
Oh,
Of
absolutely.
course. Yeah.
Okay. And then how's about persons of color or Latino or whatever? Do you have members that,
Yeah.
reflect that 30%?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we've got Latinos, we've got Asians, we've got Black, we've got whatever. We basically have the same demographic that we live in.
So your mostly white organization in a mostly white county kind of reflects the demographic, you would say.
um, well, yeah, it directly reflects the demographic. If it didn't directly reflect the demographic, well, then what exactly would we be doing to alter that? But then we wouldn't be colorblind. Then we would be racist because we're either targeting white people or we're targeting black people or we're targeting Asians or we're doing whatever. Because an organization that's a whole body of the people is going to directly reflect the demographic of that area. It has to.
Okay.
Or it's not what we're claiming it is.
Yeah,
We
please
have it
go
written
ahead.
we have it written into our bylaws that any form of racism or discrimination or hate speech of any type is not tolerated, and we have actually kicked people out of the organization who engage in that behavior. So that is one of the things that we are very strict about, is that there is no racism, discrimination, hatred, any of that.
Okay, and I think that's perfect. I just remember that was one of the claims that I had read. It said, the mostly white organization. Well, I know very little about your area, so you just told me about it, and it sounds like the guy that put this piece out also knows little about your area. That it's a mostly white area, so
Well,
it's not like you're dealing with a place where you have the demographics that are different.
well, I'm also curious what exactly he's basing that on. That we're mostly white. He's never been here. He's never even spoken to me.
Yeah, he's never talked to us. He's never been to a training or a meeting.
Or any member of my organization. He's had zero interaction with us. So he's literally just making up whatever narrative he wants to make up and going to promote that.
Well, sure. And before we change subjects, because that's also I have other questions that are based on everything that you just said. But before we get off the topic of this, maybe trying to imply that there's some sort of racist connotations, he compared your organization to another, we'll say, organization that, I take exception to that even being insinuated. And if you know what I'm saying here, why don't we go from a historical perspective first? And if you'll take this question, let's roll with those allegations.
Yeah. Honestly, there's just zero parallels with the exception of the fact that militia has existed for a long time and that organization existed a long time ago. There's no parallels whatsoever. He's literally just making up a narrative.
He made up a whole bunch of stuff to sell a story that it's flat out fiction, is what it is. He knows that buzzwords like the organization you're alluding to is going to get attention. And because people are so miseducated about our government, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our militia, and what it's supposed to be in the United States, because people have not been properly educated on how all that's supposed to work together, they're going to buy this lie that, oh, militia, they must be some crazy extremists living out in some commune in the woods somewhere. That's the lie that they tell us. And so if you throw out catchphrases and buzzwords, people are going to think that. And that's all he's doing, is he's selling a fiction story.
To get everyone up to speed, the specific allegation or parallel that was trying to be drawn was much like the Ku Klux Klan, who engaged in civic activities and tried to look like good members of their community and their society. This is a tactic that groups might use. And what I'm hearing here with the militia is the whole entire precept of the formation of the militia was to serve the county and the community in all of these ways. Unless I'm wrong. Am I wrong in that? From your chartered documents, does this addressed somewhere maybe?
Yeah, it's actually addressed in our mission statement. Is to be a force ready to. Yeah, I'll let Alex pull it up on her phone.
Yeah, pull it out verbatim, please
instead
do.
Of me trying to make something similar, but
you get these parallels that are coming out, and you picture Al Capone giving out the turkeys in Chicago, and he's for the people or whatever, whether or not he was or wasn't for the people, trying to explain away your behavior as being similar to the Ku Klux Klan, in my opinion, seems ludicrous. But I'll let you guys speak for that.
You know what else is interesting? So, obviously we're a completely volunteer organization. Because I believe that it has to be the whole body of the people, I don't have attendance requirements or dues or anything like that. So we're 100% volunteer. And when we do community support, community service projects, everything from trunk or treat to blood drives to adopt a highway, anything like that, those events are, storm cleanup, those events are better attended than when we offer a pistol or a rifle class. Mm-hmm. So it's very evident that, not just myself in leadership is trying to paint a picture or create a narrative, but all of the people who are involved in this organization, what they are looking for is community involvement and community participation.
I've got the mission statement pulled up if you want me to read it.
Perfect. Yeah, let's go with that.
The mission of Campbell County Militia consists of one purpose and 3 tasks. The purpose of CCM is to be the proper, natural, and safe defense of a free state in Campbell County, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the United States of America. This purpose will be accomplished by performing the following 3 tasks. 1. Organizing and training the local militia to a condition of order and discipline in the keeping and bearing of arms for self-defense against any imminent threat to the life, liberty, or property of the people of the community. 2. Assisting and training local citizens in disaster response and emergency preparedness for the preservation of the lives and property of the people of the community. And 3. Educating, encouraging, and empowering local citizens in personal responsibility and civic duty so as to strengthen the social bonds between the people of the community.
Okay. Except for black people, right?
No.
Except for brown people.
Let me look again. Nope, not there.
Except for any other person that might be a minority in your area. It doesn't sound like this is inclusive, correct?
Yes, it's inclusive.
It's absolutely inclusive.
Okay.
And as far as where I stand on the racism is concerned, I came from the 82nd Airborne Division, which is one of the installations that receives those who are killed in action. I watched men come home in a box draped in a flag. And you know what no one asks when someone comes home draped in a flag? They never ask what color their skin was. No longer matters. Then they're nothing but a red, white, and blue-blooded American hero. So if we don't care then, why should I care now?
No, and I agree, and I think that's a very astute observation. One of the other, now I want to get to some of the other things that you jogged me on here, is there were statements that were made about you making anti-government statements. Okay. Now, I didn't take the opportunity to sit here and pour through every single video bit that you have. I honestly don't have the time to do that. Mm-hmm. But some of these allegations that came out peg you as being anti-government, right? We've already established that you're not anti-government per your mission statement and your actions. So what is being cherry picked here? What is maybe the key that's being missed, where your words are being maybe misappropriated or misused? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, I would love to. The reality is he manufactured the quote. Because if you'll notice in the middle of that, there's a little ... which indicates that he has eliminated the context to make it say what he wants. I mean, I can't just pick and choose words that you have said at some point and put them all together and be like, oh yeah, he said all these words. That's a quote. That's not how it works. So what I said is that there are only two forces or powers on earth, excluding the power of God, that man has direct access to. One of those is violence. We see that acted out all over the world, and we have since the beginning of time with Cain and Abel. Violence is a real force or a real power. There is only one other force or power on earth that man has immediate access to that is actually capable of stopping, restraining, or preventing violence. And that is what Teddy Roosevelt captured perfectly when he said, walk softly but carry a big stick. It's a threat of force or a threat of violence. That's what is intended by the Second Amendment. It's something that we all understand innately, because if 6'5", burly looking, tough looking dude in a grunt style t-shirt is walking down the street, is he likely to be targeted by bad actors? Well, no, probably not. If Alex is walking down the street, is she more likely than the big burly guy? Yes. If 90-year-old grandmother who's 4'0" with a walker, is she more likely? Yes. Why? Because they don't have the same passive threat that the big burly jack dude has. So we all understand it innately. We just don't apply it correctly because, again, going back to the indoctrination, when we read the Second Amendment, particularly the first half, a lot of those who fall farther to the right, it's almost like they read that to say something like war or violence is necessary to the security of a free state. But that's not at all what that document says. The thrust of that is that the existence or the presence of the organization is what would act as a restraint to foreign powers, or ultimately, if you look at Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 of the U.S. Constitution, it actually tells you what the purpose of militia is. And it says that Congress shall call forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, repel invasion, and suppress insurrection. And I make the argument that I believe that all three parts of that mission can be effectively accomplished through the existence of the organization. That the presence of militia, that the existence of that dirty word, carries enough of a passive threat. And ultimately, foreign powers understand that. If you look at some of the quotes from Admiral Yamamoto, Imperial Japan, in the early part of the war there, he said a couple of things that were noteworthy. One of them is he was actually vehemently opposed to the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, he made the statement that he feared that they had awoke a sleeping giant and that the nation would bring more to bear than Imperial Japan could withstand. The other thing that he said is we would never invade America because there would be a gun behind every blade of grass. Which is a very interesting statement, particularly when you recognize that he studied war here in America. So he was speaking from firsthand knowledge that invading America would be a horrible idea because we have this idea in America of an armed citizenry that protects our homeland. And so foreign powers understand this passive threat of violence that is present with the presence of well-regulated militia. It's just the Americans that have forgotten what that's supposed to look like.
Right. Okay, and that's one of the allegations that were in there. Is there, before we wrap everything up, I want you to address anything else that, we didn't cover that was in that, because there's a lot in that article, and I don't think there's any need to really put any more sunlight on it in a sense of to draw attention to it, because it's what it seems to be. But is there anything in there that you want to address outright head on that maybe you haven't in your narrative here so far?
I don't think there was really anything else in there that...
I haven't read the article in a while. I don't really...
Yeah, I don't really make a habit out of reading his stuff if I can help it.
It said that Alex was one of the leaders.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yeah. I'm not actually a leader in Campbell County Militia. I don't hold any leadership position. Leadership within CCM is elected. I'm nobody. I'm just here.
You're just a volunteer, right?
I'm just a volunteer.
You're one of the members.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm married to the commander, so I end up doing a lot of, organizing and, trying to help out, but I'm not actually a leader, and Dan didn't actually start it, so...
Yeah, I'm not a founder.
There's all kinds of just, weird associations, just false associations in that article.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then overall, so now let's step away from the article, what brought us together, unfortunately. Um, what is your message together, or, as the organization, what is your message to everyone that might be viewing this, listening in, or that you want to get out there about you guys as individuals, and then further as the militia as well?
It's time to put power back in the hands of the American people. This country was built around the idea that Americans, the citizenry, would self-govern, that we wouldn't be ruled by another. And the only way to do that is to put constitutional militia back in every locality in America. There should not be a city or a county anywhere in America that does not have a constitutional militia that has a relationship with their county government. That's the model that we were entrusted with, and we should do everything in our power to be good stewards of that which we were entrusted with, which means putting those organizations back where they belong, putting them in their proper role in a civic relationship with their governments.
Okay,
and it ultimately, it just makes better people. It makes better citizens. That's, as far as our training model is concerned, that's basically our training model is, first responders are amazing. I'm a firefighter, have been for a long time. I was a EMT for years. Law enforcement, firefighters, EMS, any of those first responders are amazing. The problem is we typically show up too late. Immediate responders are even better, which is all the people who are there when something happens, that witness or are involved in the car accident, that are the first one to see the smoke or the flames, that are there when an active shooting environment develops. Those are immediate responders, and we need to be making better immediate responders in America, which is just being a good citizen. So yeah, medical training and firearms training and doing blood drives and all of the stuff that makes us better citizens, better contributors to our society.
Well, you're certainly making the showing that the privatization of all of these things, because essentially it's the privatization of it, not run by the government itself with a capital G. It's the citizens that are able to help make this stuff happen and do it efficiently. So if anything, your services are going above and beyond what I think that you probably maybe even imagined. And that's just my opinion.
There's a component of CCM that is very heavily into homesteading and preparation and that kind of interests. And with all these storms we've had coming through, they've been sitting there sharing all this information about what worked, what didn't work, how much water they really needed for, however many days without power. They've been helping each other out just fantastically. We've had people cutting down trees and helping clearing roads, just because it needed to be done and the community needed it. That's the type of people that are in Campbell County Militia.
And ultimately, that's what makes America America. Is this idea that we're willing to give of ourselves, for someone else. There's a seminar, and I can't remember who the guy that was speaking, but it was put on by the Liberty Seed Project, guy talking about Lexington and Concord. And he was talking about the British column as it's retrograding from Concord back to Boston, and it's being harassed by colonial militia. And he said there's two things that you needed to understand to appreciate the story. One is that at the time, the word or the order of a militia officer was absolute law. You faced a firing squad or a noose if you violated the order. And of course, the order of the day issued by John Parker was stand your ground, do not fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, let it be here or let it be today. So they were respecting that order and not firing unless fired upon. And the other thing you needed to understand is these men didn't know each other. They didn't have the ability to travel the way we travel today. And so these men from neighboring militias probably did not know each other. At one point, the column encounters a bridge that is too narrow for the column to pass through, and so it kind of bottlenecks the whole thing. And there's one militia company that's in the road that's marching behind the British column. Well, they continue to march when the column stops. They're getting closer. And so the rear guard detachment decides we're going to give them a volley and back them off. So they form a firing line in the road and are prepared to give this militia company a volley. Well, one of the colonial officers in the wood line realizes what's transpiring and goes, wait a minute, they're going to take a volley at point blank and be slaughtered in the street if I don't do something, but I'm going to have to violate the order. And so he thinks about it and says, I can't watch that happen. So he gives the order to load and make ready and open fire. And so they do, and they cut down the rear guard detachment in the road, and there were no Americans killed there. And the guy teaching the seminar stops, and he says, he said, you always hear about that lone shot at Lexington Green. No one knows where it came from. Well, that's the shot heard around the world. That's the moment that America was born. He said, I'm inclined to disagree. He says, I believe that this was the moment that America was born. He said, the moment that a man decided that he would lay down his life for someone else, is that he would forfeit his life for someone he doesn't even know. He said, that's the moment America was born. He said, what other nation in the history of the world has sent their young men by the hundreds of thousands to die on someone else's dirt for someone else's liberty? Not to build an empire, not to conquer, to rule another nation, but to literally buy someone else's liberty and blood. He said, I'll give you a hint. It has never happened in the history of the world. And that was something that I got a really good appreciation for when I went to Normandy with the National Guard last year for D-Day 79. The people in Normandy, France, they understand that. These people come running up to you as soon as they see the uniform, begging for an opportunity to thank you and show their appreciation for what was done on the beaches of Normandy and all across Normandy, because they recognized that they were ruled by another and their freedom was bought by Americans who took nothing in return.
Well, thank you for sharing that, for sure. Where can people find you guys? Where can people learn about you? How could they support you? I want you to give me like your solid 30-second minute pitch. I want you to get your message out there and let everyone know how they could find you.
Well, Campbell County Militia has a website, which is campbellmilitia.com.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have social media. Now there is, that
YouTube and Instagram.
Yeah, YouTube and Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Campbell Militia, will find it. And Alex and I do still have a joint Facebook page that we don't have access to because our personal accounts on both Facebook and Instagram were deleted. But we do have someone that manages that for us. So if people reach out on that platform, Dana and Alexandra Abbott, it will get to us eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But we need you to reach out to Campbell Militia's website and ask for information, ask to talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
They'll send you my cell phone number. We'll email you back. We need to build this in other localities.
Yeah.
It's not good enough that a few counties in Virginia have it. It has to be in every county in Virginia and every county in America.
Yeah.
We need the people to stand up and start taking their responsibility seriously.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much. And if you don't have anything else, I'd like to wrap it up here, if that's cool with you guys.
I think we're good.
It's good with us.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. Have a fantastic day.